Hello and welcome to FCTV's Senate Spotlight with State Senator Sue Moran. I'm Eileen Preston, and we always like to check in with our state senator, and here she is, live and in person. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Eileen. Happy to be here.
We really appreciate it. You've been very, very busy. The budget just came in, $52 billion.
Right.
Just so people know, you've had a lot to do, a lot of amendments you've added to a lot of things, so we're going to cover a lot of those for your committees.
Yes.
But just to remind people, you have 8 towns, am I right?
I do. I have 4 on each side of the canal. On the Cape side, I have Falmouth, Sandwich, Mashpee, Bourne, and then I have Plymouth and 3 towns around on the other side.
Right. Pembroke, Plymouth,
Plimpton,
and
Kingston.
Kingston.
Yes.
Thank you. I always forget Kingston, so can't forget Kingston.
No.
So I think of you as sort of straddling both sides of the Cape, right? And you've also had to straddle some Democratic and Republican conservative pockets, Democratic progressive product.
It's a purple district, which I so appreciate because I'm a centrist myself. I'm a business person. I believe in being able to bring resources to families, kitchen table issues, and there are also lots of commonalities. Most of the communities are ocean facing. Most of the communities are dealing with the same things: housing, innovation, workforce. So it's a terrific district, the Plymouth Barnstable.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in, I think you have 8 committees.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, you've been pretty busy on child care. Is that one of your committees? Am I right?
The child care bill that the Senate will be teeing up this Wednesday, I am one of the lead sponsors, and it's been viewed in terms of the way I think of things as an economic bill. It is a way to bring, after COVID, especially women back into the workforce. It's a way to really raise the level of infant, toddler health, being able to have professionals really look holistically at children, and professionals who do child care. The bill will really have some influences in letting them practice to the top of their credentials, giving them help and incentives to increase their credentials. So when you look at child care legislation, the Common Start Advocacy Group, Amy O'Leary has been incredibly forceful in what I think is our most precious asset is our next generation. And if we want to continue to be competitive in Massachusetts the way we like to be competitive, number one, then we need to look at our next generation, and we need to do it now so that folks who are in the workforce can get back to really going as far as they can in their careers. It helps real estate values. It really helps all of our communities be incredibly vibrant.
And some of that you're doing is with tax credits. Am I right? You're increasing the tax credits for people as they deduct for their child care.
Yes,
is that right?
In fact, I brought some specifics.
Okay.
When we look at child care resources statewide, and you look at the child and family tax credits, it's going to cover children under 13, people with disabilities, and senior dependents age 65 and older. We're going to eliminate the cap, and we're going to go from 180 to 440 in terms of credits beginning in 2024. That's going to help a ton of families, especially if you have more than one child. There won't be just credit for one child, it'll be credit for all the children in the family.
Because you have to pay for all the children.
Exactly.
Yeah, it only makes sense, huh?
And so there's a lot of funding that you're going to see for families and older dependents as well.
Brilliant, okay. And this may not be happening in this particular Common Start bill, but many of these people who do this care, child care, they're not paid as well, right? So that's a struggle for them, right? And it's good that you're trying to get professional licensure sort of to help them out. get them higher up in the income brackets. Yeah.
And it's a workforce issue, right? Because although the industry received some funding through COVID to help keep childcare workforce in business, right now, everyone, it's not just the childcare industry, but so many industries are really trying to make sure people are paid a fair wage. And so a lot of funding has gone towards bringing up the workforce from, say, believe it or not, it was $13, $14 an hour, and up. The food service industry is often given as a comparison. And here, we're taking care of Massachusetts children. That is an incredibly high responsibility. And they're looking at developmental issues. These are professionals who deserve a living wage.
Yeah, they've got our precious resource in their hands. We better start, treating them. Yeah, exactly. Just good luck with that. So now, if we can segue to the SAFER Act. I wonder if you could explain what the SAFER Act is.
Sure.
Okay.
So the SAFER Act is the Senate's version of the next gun-related bill,
Right.
really. It's gun safety, and what the Senate did was a little bit different than the House. The Senate took a long time having conversations, particularly with first responders, police officers. And one of the things that I did is I met with every single one of my chiefs of police, and I said, what do we need to do to, people have a general agreement on ghost guns, for example. Nobody wants,
unserialized guns.
Exactly,
right.
And there's a lot of that in the legislation, but particular to the Plymouth Barnstable district, I want to credit Chief Esop from Bourne and his staff and fellow officers were talking about that there really is not a sufficient data system to be able to accurately track whether someone should have a license to carry, whether someone should have a renewed license to carry. Sometimes there have been infractions, and if you don't have a database to look at that background, the licensing authority, as the chief of police, would not necessarily know whether there was a good reason not to renew that application. So that's one of the amendments that I got passed, so I'm very proud of that. And when you look at just the data sharing
Yes.
between one district to another, so that the two amendments that I filed and which are in the current bill that's proposed by the Senate, both were tools for officers to be able to do their job, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, and I know David Vieira has been working on something similar with Kiana's law, right? He's
Right.
been trying to get the police to be able to see when they make a stop, maybe somebody has a harasser. So there's some of that harassment. You might be able to get your gun taken away if you have this kind of if you're a threat to other people.
Well, we see how important communication and record keeping is. So I, coincidentally, just got off the phone with Kiana's father.
Oh,
And we, Rep. Vieira and I have worked closely on this. I really want to give Rep. Vieira credit for spearheading, and I'm working on it, the same issues in the Senate, whereas he's working on it in the House. And that tragedy may have been avoided if the family knew that
we should say that what Kiana Barrows, right? She was a victim of domestic abuse.
She was shot by an ex-boyfriend.
Murdered here in Falmouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the family had done everything they possibly could, which is get a restraining order.
Right.
And they did not have the information that it had not been served, because it was evidently, if I remember correctly, attempted, but they just weren't able to actually get the perpetrator. And that, it just was an absolute tragedy. Young woman, beautiful, in the prime of her life, incredible, just really light of a person, and her life was cut way too early. And so Rep. Vieira and I are working hard to really put legislation in place, and I give the Barrows family credit for making this a tribute to their daughter that will, I think, save other lives moving forward.
Yeah, that information collection is so important. I think another thing is it says it's going to codify Massachusetts' existing prohibition on assault weapons, and copies are duplicates of basically weapons of war. So when it says it's going to codify an existing prohibition, what does that mean? I mean, it sounds like they're already outlawed, but it's going to codify the outlaw. So,
well, one of the things, when I went and brought all the police chiefs together with me and said, you all are the experts, we want to make sure that the legislation serves your needs in terms of you're the ones that need to enforce the laws. And what I heard over and over again is that let's just enforce the laws that are already on the books. And I also heard, let's make sure that another set of legislation doesn't just complicate existing laws. So there was an ask to sort of streamline and make straightforward and enforceable the laws that are on the books, rather than just add more laws. So I think that the police are in a great position to know what they need, and so that was an example of making sure that there was, the existing prohibitions would be fit so that they could be enforced by the police officers who have that job on the front lines.
Okay. And there's also going to be a little mental health and gun licensing sort of component to this.
Which makes, we hear time and time again that it's often the mental health of the individuals rather than the laws that really need to be tracked. And that's why the data sharing is so important. And, when we look at, I've also gotten funding for first responders in my district with respect to their own mental health issues. They're the ones that are arriving on the scenes first.
Sure.
We have an incredible opioid issue where our young people are dying. We've got fentanyl, xylazine. The DA, Rob Galliboy, is doing a tremendous job going out into the community to be able to appropriately regulate and enforce these laws. And so really, sometimes it's about having the boots on the ground. Police officers are there to enforce the law, but if they can take a mental health professional out with them to kind of address that aspect of a situation, we're not only helping the citizens, but we're really giving that police officer the tools to do their job. And same thing with fire professionals. Oftentimes will be on a scene and have just horrific encounters, and they carry that home with them. And so they need their own, if they choose to, they need access to whatever services help them out as well. We want to be sure we take care of them.
Yeah, absolutely. They're taking care of us. We got to take care of them. And there's a bit on the red flag law, which is, I believe it's called ERPO. It's basically if a physician, a health practitioner, notices that someone's in danger for themselves or they might be in danger for their family, they can petition the court to have a gun taken away from them, which seems like kind of a logical thing to me, helpful. So there's that part of it. So the red flag law has been strengthened a bit by this SAFER Act.
It has.
Yeah. And sensitive places. So that's about you can't carry your weapon everywhere in Massachusetts. Am I right?
Well, that's right. So one of the conversations was about, we don't want necessarily police officers to be included in that, because part of their training is to be able to defend. So that's part of the conversation that's happening. And with respect to places to carry, there have been incidents in courtrooms. There have been where there are, two sides to domestic especially. So we want to be sure that that gun laws help law enforcement and not overly burden them.
Right. And you did get a little buy-in from some of your chiefs, is that right?
Absolutely. Not only that, but I've got to credit Senate President Karen Spilka and Mike Rodrigues, the chair of Ways and Means, were very active and being sure that as compared with the House bill, which took a long time to put together and then was pretty controversial, that the Senate would put something up for that conversation that had the buy-in from state police chiefs, state organizations. And so there was, in fact, they came to the Senate chambers and really talked about what they would like to see and what would make sense to them. And so the idea that the Senate's proposal has that kind of, I think backing is important.
Yeah. So that's the SAFER Act, and that is right now in a committee, is that right?
Right.
So what happens there?
So there are members from the House and members from the Senate. The House lays out, okay, this is our bill, Senate, this is our bill, and there's conversations, about what would make sense. It's the ultimate negotiation. And out of that committee will come one bill. One consensus, and that'll go through the House and the Senate, and then put before the governor for the approbation of the governor.
Timelines? Do you have any?
I don't, but I certainly think that it's well known that both the Senate and the House have this top of mind, and that usually means it's going to be quicker. We're talking legislative time.
Okay, gotcha. Legislative time, I like that.
New concept.
So let's talk about something that is another committee that you work on, which is emerging technologies and sort of fission versus fusion. And you were at MIT recently, which is kind of fascinating. So
I was just so privileged to speak at the MIT consortium of real energy brains. I mean, there is so much interest in climate change, of course, and we were on a timeline to address the climate emergency. And so we've got to look at alternative forms. I've got Holtec in mind. Holtec sits right in Plymouth. That's one of my communities, but it's right at Cape Cod Bay, and it affects my entire district as well as the entire Cape. And when we look at the decommissioning and making sure that Holtec does that correctly, which I really have to mention, just this week it was discovered, and in the newspaper, Cape Cod Times perhaps, asbestos issues, contamination issues, and also an accounting issue of where some of the funding for donations for local events have come from, because the decommissioning funding, we want to be sure goes to decommissioning, because once that fund is gone, it's on the taxpayers, and the taxpayers have already paid for the decommissioning in their energy bills. So I'm on that. I've been the lead on that. And that was one of the reasons I filed the fusion bill, because what happens when the Holtec Corporation leaves that site? That has been, while it was producing, it was a source of tax revenue for the town of Plymouth. So one of the potential things to do would be to repurpose it from nuclear to fusion. I mean, you've got the infrastructure there. It wouldn't cost as much as starting from ground zero.
Less radioactivity.
Absolutely.
Not entirely unradioactive material, but this byproduct is much less than with fission, which is the old plant. Right?
That's correct. And Commonwealth Fusion has a great website if people want to look that up and look into it themselves. But this is, it's an opportunity to put a framework in place for the future uses, so that the Plymouth Barnstable district can still keep their electric bills hopefully lower than other sources of energy.
And do you see that changing soon, that plant will change to fission?
Well, that's another issue, because the decommissioning company, Holtec, has really slowed down, because the advocates are really making some headway in saying, why are you burying everything here? Why don't you truck it, or better yet, ferry it to decommissioning sites that have been designated by the federal government?
Right.
Why are you leaving this in Plymouth?
Yeah.
And so that conversation with Holtec has said, well, then we're going to stop what we're doing because we just want to go the cheapest route,
Sure.
is the way
Yeah.
I interpret it. And so that's right now, they're in the hot seat to do it safer, to do it quickly, and that will allow the community to make decisions about how to have energy at that site, or maybe not. Maybe there's a decision locally that it should be, soccer fields. So it's about choices.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So let's stay around that area because I think you're concerned also about transportation. We've got the bridges. I think they're going to be $4.5 billion for the 2 bridges.
Right.
We're going to do Sagamore first.
Yes.
They had a Sagamore traffic problem a little while ago with work, and then you're trying to respond to that because this month they're doing some Bourne bridge work around
Right.
the rotary and striping, and I think they call it geometric changes. Or so what's
I'll
going
tell
on
you a
with
little
that?
bit about that. So a while ago, and everybody experienced this, I had a 1 o'clock meeting in Plymouth. It's a little more than it's a 35-minute drive. I left at 11. I gave 2 hours to get to that meeting, a 35-minute drive. I sat on Adams Street for almost an hour, not moving. A fight, a fisticuffs broke out at the school that's nearby. And I called my chief of staff and I said, I've had it. I said, I want DOT, I want Army Corps. Please have, everyone from Bourne who is invested in the bridges and how this is being done. And by the way, that same 2 or 3 days around there, I had gotten numerous calls from the Bourne chief of police about sort of issues that he was trying to move forward in safety with respect to the rotary, and there hadn't been a response. And so I got everyone in a Zoom room, and we made commitments that there would be a point person to address problems from both the Army Corps and DOT. There were
Which there hadn't been until you had this Zoom call.
No.
See, this is great.
That's what's great about
Solutions.
being a senator,
Yeah.
being able to bring people together so that there's efficiency, not only for the taxpayer, but for the community. And so there was a decision made that we, and police involved, Chief East was amazing, to say the best solution is probably just to close Adams Street with respect to the issues with the neighbors. They weren't even able to access their homes, so there was a new route. So there were solutions that were brought up. Everyone knows that bridge traffic is horrendous, and when there are bridge fixes going on, it's much, much worse. But one night I was coming home, it was about 11 at night, there wasn't a light on anywhere, and I was just sitting at that stupid light for, it seemed like 10 minutes. And the next meeting I said, guys, we have to stop this stupid stuff. I said, because people know we're going to have to fix this, but when there are things that make no sense, it understandably causes angst, and that's what we can work on in the margins. So what's happening now? Now the Bourne Rotary is going to be repainted, is I guess the way to look at it, so that it will be clearer which lane
You're in.
DOT should
Yeah.
likes you to be in,
Okay.
depending on where you're going. They're going to do that work at night, which I think is a great sensible thing that I hope came out of these meetings. But the big picture, and I just had Senator Warren called me not too long ago, the funding from the federal government, which seems to have been a little bit sluggishly coming, just like everything from the federal government, is now in a really good place. That and Governor Healy put, I think it's 900,000. In other words, the federal government wants to be sure the state has skin in the game. Right, the Army Corps owns the bridges. The decision by Massachusetts was not to take ownership until this major bridge fixes, the two of them had been done. Preliminarily, the Sagamore is on track to get the initial okay on moving forward with replacement. The decision was made, even though they're both in bad shape, both the Bourne and the Sag. The decision to move forward on the Sag was made first because it takes more cars. So it was thought that that would address more people's transportation issues first. What I have said loudly and repeatedly, and sometimes fist-poundingly, is that there are two bridges. I don't want anybody for a minute to think that they are going to just put a fix that's going to take 4 years of traffic hell on the Bourne and give a complete replacement to the Sagamore. I've made that absolutely clear. The federal delegation has as well. And every time we talk about bridges, Chamber of Commerce is right in there with us. It's the two bridges. So we want to, I think everyone that's seeing this show should be sure that they keep an eye and make sure that your votes, your correspondence all reflect the fact that you want to be sure, yes, the Sagamore gets done, but the Bourne as well.
Don't forget the left and right arms.
Exactly right.
Yeah, very important. Last question I wanted to ask you about committees was, you're on the Cannabis Policy Committee. I don't know how you get on that committee, but
just lucky, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. The meetings are interesting, but so recently I read that there's one of your policies which is about the Senate unanimously voted for this and passed it, and it's now sitting at the House Ways and Means Committee. They're thinking about it still, and they've sort of parked it. And that's about first responders in cannabis. So can you talk a little bit about that and what your feeling is on that?
So the we want to be sure that we address the fact that first responders have been leaving their jobs in general, health professionals, and it's a highly stressful position. So if there, there are many cannabis regulations which were put into place and existed before legalization of cannabis use in Massachusetts. It's still illegal federally. So there's a clash between those rules. And one of the things we want to be sure that doesn't happen is that a background check of cannabis use doesn't prevent someone from functioning as a first responder, or we want to make sure that all of our laws are coordinated. So that's what that effort is about.
So it's interesting right now as it stands, if they have cannabis in their background, they can't be a first responder. But we once had a president way back in the 90s who was able to be president, commander-in-chief, who had it in his background, right? So,
that's a good example.
Okay, so it's interesting. So that's a law that might need to be looked at again.
That's right.
Things have to be changed sometimes, right?
Updated.
So what else do you want to talk about that you've covered? Because I know we have like a personal...
Oh, absolutely. So I really have the best job in the world. I've had so much experience on the Cape, just chairing the Board of Selectmen in Falmouth and being deputy speaker of the county government, chairing economic development for the whole Cape. But I'm also a lawyer for many, many years, a litigation attorney. And an opportunity came up. I had many asks to consider running for clerk of courts for Barnstable County, and that's the clerk for the Superior Court. And at first I just couldn't think about it because I'm really so busy being able to move important legislation. Every time I go into the Senate chamber, the imprimatur of it strikes me every time that I'm so lucky and so privileged to be able to do this work. But I finally got someone basically grabbing my arm and saying, "No, think about this." And when I did, I said, there's so much that I could do with my background and my public service kind of focus. I'm a customer service person. I mean, when you think about a senator, it's really people need things and you hope you can get them and give them to that person or find whoever can give it to that person. And when you look at the court, the justice system, and right now so much has changed. Things are so expensive. Attorneys' time is incredibly expensive. And you know, the old adage, you know, justice delayed is
justice denied.
Denied, right? And I thought about how much that I could do with my background and with my knowledge of the State House and resources to improve that system for the lawyers, for the judges, for the people at the counter, to be that public-facing person, to be able to do that more localized problem solving. I just started getting so psyched, and I said, all right, I'm going to do this. And then the minute I did, I said, oh my gosh, what did I do? Like, do I? So it's a bit bittersweet, you know. So, but I'm running.
So it's a front-facing administrator for the
Yes.
Barnstable Superior Court.
Yes.
And so you deal a little bit with the schedule, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
So the judges don't do the schedule, you do the schedule, or how does it work?
So it's really about the administration of the documents and caretaking of
Yeah.
those documents, and it's about making sure that the judges have the help that they need and the resources and the technology that they need to move those cases forward. You know, it's the court of equity jurisdiction. It's the court that is able to make court orders that aren't just monetary. And when you look at how important that is, you know, when you see the cases, the serious cases, whether it's criminal or civil, Barnstable County, I think, is really the place that can shine in terms of being able to have equity in the efficiency of running the judicial system. So I'm excited about that.
Well, you'd be an amazing asset with all that knowledge base. It's amazing.
Thank you.
And I hope that if you do get that position, that you come back and talk to us about it, because I think the justice system, the way it works, would be a fascinating topic. People don't know that much. I think the DA is doing a good job of trying to get people to understand it, but you know, it's a complicated and very interesting field.
Oh my gosh, I was with the DA just yesterday, and you know, I spoke at the suicide prevention conference, and you know, there's just so much that's, whether it's opioids, trafficking. I mean, there really are serious issues on the Cape that need a cost-effective, efficient, expedited delivery of justice with.
Yeah, okay. So it's International Women's Day. International Women's Day, and I'm wondering, as you look back 8 years as a state senator, this is a tricky, hard question, but so profiles in courage, or as you look back at your whole experience, what you didn't know, what you did know, what you witnessed, is there a moment where you thought, wow, I'm sure you made a difference a lot of times, but is there something that you can think about that you would tell your grandchildren?
So I, as a senator, for the last 4 years and plus, I look at my child care bill that is right before the Senate coming up on Wednesday. And then I look at the 4 prior years of working as a Board of Select Chair and all the other county and local state government work that I've done. What I learn is every voice is important, and women have incredibly astute voices because they oftentimes are the kind of the engineer of the family along with their work outside the home. And one of the things with the challenges on women's rights right now and trying to even get equal pay, it's worth fighting for. and it's worth knowing you're worth it. And because we may be distracted, we've got someone, I always use the example of, it's late at night, you've worked all day, you've helped the kids with their homework, you've read the bedtime stories, you finally get them all set, you're getting ready for the next day, you open up the lunchbox, and there's the note from the teacher with, I need a milk carton. And you look at the milk that you just bought, rushing home from work, and you look for whatever, an appropriate Tupperware, so you dump the milk out, you put the milk carton into the, and so who has time or energy to really say, I've done a comparative analysis of everybody that's working in the company, and I am on par with, person A and person B, but yet I make less. So could we please have a meeting about that? I mean, we've got to be sure that we support women in those conversations.
Amen. And the ripple effects if women made what men make, right, for our children and even for our husbands and for everybody's retirement. I mean, it's not just good for women. It's not just being greedy for yourself to ask for that. It'll help the world. Buying power, the whole bit. Yeah, I'm on that.
You put that so beautifully, because that is the work for the family.
Yeah.
And that's what women do best.
Yeah. And you have done best for 8 years now. How much longer do we have you for?
Oh my gosh, I'm just getting going.
Okay. Well, we thank you very much for coming in. I hope you're coming back in many capacities, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Eileen.
And we appreciate you for listening, and tune in next time. Thank you very much.